a living at it. I still work at it. I'm 72 and I still work as a commercial photographer. Architecture, I don't do studio stuff. High-end kitchens is mostly what I do there. But I also have a love affair with working with large format cameras and film. All this is from either 4x5 or 5x7 film. Some of it is, well, there's 5x12 film here too. And they're all contact platinum prints, which is the only way I print anymore. It's a process that I enjoy. And I'm starting to make more smaller prints, going back to the smaller prints rather than the larger prints, because I'm in the process of making handmade books with my platinum prints, because I just think that that's a more memorable way I want to work in in what I do. Because I tend to work in projects rather than just go out randomly looking for images. So I have a lot of projects that I work on, some of them simultaneously, and one project always leads to another. This project was a project that took about 10 years to work on. It's a combination of the 4 major canals in New York: the Erie Canal, the Cuyahoga-Seneca, the Oswego, and the Champlain Canal. And I did a show a couple years ago with this work that had 50 prints in it, and a local museum acquired the entire show from me, which was really, really nice. So I have 50 pieces in permanent collection. It was a nice, due to the benefactor of a nice lawyer. So
works. A lawyer with taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I made 3 sets of the prints that were in that show, and this is some of the extra prints that were in there. And I've enjoyed chasing the Erie Canal. I found a lot of old sections of the canal, new section. Most of what you see is original Erie Canal work from the 1800s. What happened was in 2017 was the 200th anniversary of the Erie Canal. So it was a project I worked on for prior to that for the past 7 or 8 years in conjunction with the New York State Canal Corporation. And producing this, they gave me like carte blanche to go wherever I wanted to go and do what I wanted to do. I found a lot of areas, and there were scenes that are a result of the canal that I photographed also. And I'm working on the second part of this project, which is the towns that grew up alongside the canal that are now kind of going downhill because of the interstate and other modern transportation, such as railroads and trucking industry and so forth. So I don't really want to talk so much about the prints. Just if you have questions about them, that's great, but I kind of like let the images kind of speak for themselves. I don't have a lot of stories about a lot of the images. I've actually hiked the entire length of all the canals over 10 years, not one time. I spend weeks at a time out. I take off for about 5 or 6 days and photograph an area and hike along it, and I've taught workshops along it. So it's been a passion of mine for a long time, and I watch how the light hits a lot of the places, and that's I photographed in the wintertime. You'll see a lot of winter scenes in the fog. I do a lot of work with soft focus lenses also. I kind of have a passion for the soft focus. I like the pictorial feel for what this is. And I think this process and the soft pictorial look reminisces what this was like 200 years ago. So I think the way I'm working with this kind of goes hand in hand together in producing this body of work. And the museum also produced a book of my work. So it's called The Spirit of the Ditch. And that's, I think it's very appropriate. I came up with the title because I think finding the spirit in some of these old places is what makes the images and so forth. And a lot of these things I found in the Erie Canal Corporation didn't even know about, but I did a lot of research and so forth, so, you know, just ask away.
Is every image related to the canal series?
Every one of these images is related to the canal.
Tell me how the church pews is.
The church pews, well, Erie Canal was one of the big proponents of moving religion from New York to the Midwest to the West Coast. The Mennonites started in their religion because of the Erie Canal coming forward. They came on the boats and settled down in Palmyra. And a lot of the churches were very fundamental right on the canal. The Irish did a lot of digging of the canal. There was churches just all along the canal. And so these are churches from the early 1800s that I photographed. And so the churches were a big proponent of people working along the canal, building the canal and so forth. So the second part of the project is the churches in the town. So this is part of the second project of this entire thing. So there is a relationship of the churches and the towns and so forth that connect with the canal.
Steve, if I could, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. In Lockport, where I grew up, there are two Catholic churches right about on the canal. One for the Irish, one for the rest of the congregation. Because the Irish were considered the migrant people of the time and were not allowed to be part of the rest of society. So they actually had their own churches, even right in Lockport, which is a bigger hub than some of the smaller places.
All of the locks along the canal, there was 83 of them in the original canal. They all had their own powerhouses where they generated electricity, because the canal works with gravity-fed water through the locks. There's no pumping or anything in any of the locks. So the water is all gravity-fed from one lock to the next throughout the system. And this is in the early part of the in Lockport, right up the street from where I live, and this is when they're filling the canal early in the spring. It's the only time this mill race works and operates and so forth. And
anything down to Champlain?
anything from the Champlain on here? No, I have some in the box over there. I didn't put all the prints out, but I do have.
Do you say that you have relatives historically that have made this route?
No.
Okay.
No, I have no relatives. I'm not from New York, I'm not from Lockport. I was born in southern Indiana, but lived most of my life in Boston, Massachusetts.
What started this? What was the?
I live right down the street from where they fill the canal, and this set of locks, the Flight of 5. And I just was down there one day and I just started photographing there with my large format camera. And then I go to some of the lift bridges and some of the areas other than along the canal, and just one thing kind of just led to another.
You ever run into Tillman Crane?
Tillman Crane?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He's the one that had the show with me.
Well, okay. All
I
right.
taught workshops with him for about 5 years along the canal.
Your work has a real 19th century sensibility.
Well, that's exactly what I was hoping that people would get out of it. That's why I titled the project "The Spirit of the Ditch."
And the soft images remind me of, familiar with Peter Emerson?
Yes.
Landscape, very much reminds me of that.
This image, tell me how it plays into the Erie Canal. And this is standalone image, it's spectacular.
A lot along the canal, there were aqueducts, and there are two different kinds of aqueducts. And one of them is spelled A-Q-U-A, and that's an aqueduct that has a road over a river or over another roadway. And then there's an aqueduct called A-Q-U-E, D-U-C-T, And that's an aqueduct of water over water. And these were aqueducts. This was an aqueduct that, this is the Seneca Aqueduct that went over the Mohawk River. And what the boats would go over, now they have, they dam the river and they know how to control the rivers more. But back then they didn't, so that they had aqueducts that went over rivers, and so the boats went over. And this is one of the arches with the late afternoon light coming through it. It was on the other side of this one. This one goes out, and then I'm over here on the other side of the wall. We found this other part over there. This is some of the stonework from another aqueduct.
But those trees are needing to, they started inside of that, and they're needing to find their way
Yeah, well,
up.
that's 200 years old, so there's trees growing everywhere.
Searching for life.
Yeah,
That's a spectacular image.
yeah. There's the sun setting on the other side over there. And that's what I'm looking for in a lot of these.
Love that reflection of that
Yeah.
image right there.
Oh, this one.
Yeah,
That's a
very,
real nice
very,
image.
very nice placement in the frame.
And it's two images from the reflection, yeah, that.
This one?
Yeah, it now, I'm assuming that's early morning.
No, I'm actually, that's sunset. I'm shooting into the soft focus lens. That's original Clinton's ditch.
Yeah, the light's exquisite now, it's just very, very well done. Very well controlled too, beautiful.
This, when you look at this picture, you can see how an aqueduct here went across this river here. One of the largest ones. This is an intersection of the Genesee River coming in and the Erie Canal coming, and these were the famous arches that the park designer designed.
Dennis, why don't you mention how they put that block together?
What's
Stone. How the masons put that stone together? Without mortar, all of that's built without mortar.
No, these are freestones. There's no mortar or anything in any of these. The older ones. This one. This is a Skohari crossing. All these there is no mortar in these stones at all. They're just stones that they put together. They built wooden structures and then put the stone around it and then took them away. It's incredible, the stonework. That's why I did so many shots with the detail of the stone.
Craftsmanship.
It is. Well, that's what I like about this fact, is that the way I'm doing this is similar to the way they built the original Erie Canal. Everything I'm doing here is all done by hand. The papers that I'm using are handmade papers. I'm hand coating it. I'm mixing all my chemicals right from scratch. So that it's a total hands-on process, just as the canal was built. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. That's how I worked on it.
Exceptional.
Good, thanks.